Her hand brushed mine, barely a touch, really, as she passed the mug across the table. But it lingered, just long enough to feel intentional. Her fingers were warm, her nails unpainted. I didn't look up right away. I was afraid that if I did, I'd find something there in her eyes I wasn't ready to see. But I felt it, that quiet, unspoken pull. And when I finally glanced up, she was already looking away, smiling softly, like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't just crossed some invisible line we'd both been tiptoeing around for weeks. I hadn't expected my life to change at the library. It was supposed to be a temporary job, part-time assistant at a small, aging branch tucked between the post office and a yoga studio that always smelled like eucalyptus. I was 25, fresh out of college with an English degree and no clear plan. The library offered quiet, and I needed quiet. Most days passed in hushed routine. I shelved books, stamped due dates, answered questions about printer settings and late fees. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth writing about, until she walked in. It was a rainy Tuesday in early October. The kind of rain that soaked your jeans in seconds and turned your jacket sleeves cold and damp. I was behind the counter, fighting with the label printer, when the door creaked open and she stepped inside. She wasn't dramatic about it. No heels clicking or perfume cloud announcing her arrival. She just moved, smooth, steady, like she belonged. Mid-40s, maybe a little older. Hard to tell. She had one of those faces that made you want to stare longer, not because it was conventionally beautiful, but because there was something lived in about it. Soft lines near her mouth, dark circles that hadn't been concealed, hair pulled into a messy bun that didn't look curated. Just real. She was wearing a long gray cardigan over a loose sweater and jeans. No umbrella. Her hair clung damply to her temples. She held a paperback in her hand. Worn, the cover bent, pages fanned from water. She approached the counter, placed the book down, and gave me a tired smile. Sorry, I think I ruined it. Her voice was lower than I expected. Smooth. Tired. Honest. I looked at the title. The Unbearable Lightness of Being. I remember that part clearly. It's okay, I said, taking it gently. We've had worse. Fire damage once. Someone microwaved a book, trying to dry it. She laughed, but it was quiet. Almost like she wasn't sure she was allowed. Good to know I'm not the worst offender. She lingered there for a moment. Just stood there while I checked the book back in. Our eyes met once. Not long, but enough. Anything you're looking for today? I asked like I was supposed to. She hesitated, then shook her head. No, just needed a reason to get out of the house. There was something in the way she said it. Not sad exactly, but not light either. Well, we're open until 6, I offered. You can stay as long as you like. She nodded. Thanks. The lie, I said. She didn't offer her name. Just smiled again, small, unreadable, and moved toward the fiction shelves. She came back the next day, and the next, always around 3 p.m., always alone. She never took more than 2 or 3 books. Never asked questions. Just browsed, read, sometimes sat at the far table by the window where the light came in soft and gold, especially on cloudy days. I started to look forward to 3 p.m., started to time my breaks so I could be at the desk when she arrived. I never asked her name. It felt too soon, but something was happening. Slowly, quietly, the kind of thing you don't name at first, the kind you only realize in pieces. Like how I noticed when she switched from fiction to poetry, or how she always picked the same chair, even if someone had just vacated it and the seat was still warm. Or how, once, when I made a joke about Kafka being a total buzzkill, she laughed, really laughed, and then apologized for laughing too loud. That's how it started. Not with fireworks, with silence, rain, and a ruined paperback. She didn't come on Friday. I kept glancing at the door, half distracted through most of my shift. Every time it creaked open, I felt that quiet jolt, the one you get when you're hoping it's someone specific. But it never was. An old man with a stack of crossword books. A mother with 2 shrieking toddlers. A teenager asking for the Wi-Fi password. Not her. The absence felt heavier than it should have. I didn't even know her name. Saturday she returned. Same time. Same cardigan. Her hair still damp, this time from snow instead of rain. It clung to her temples in soft curls, and I could see the faint redness in her cheeks from the cold. She gave me that same small smile as she passed the desk. I missed yesterday, she said, like she owed me an explanation. I shrugged, casual on the outside. You don't have to punch in. No, she said, her smile faltering. But I wanted to come. Just had to deal with something. I didn't push. Something about her always made me more careful with my words. Like too much interest might scare her off, but too little would miss the point. She moved to her usual spot near the window, pulled a slim poetry book from her tote. Szymborska. I remember because I'd shelved it that morning. It still smelled faintly of wood and ink. I went back to my desk but couldn't focus. Every so often, I'd glance over, always subtle, always short. And once, I caught her doing the same. Our eyes met. She didn't look away. She just held my gaze for a breath too long, then lowered hers back to the page. Something had shifted. Slightly, but definitely. At closing time, she didn't get up until the lights flickered. She returned the book, stepped up to the desk, and for the first time, leaned her arms on the counter like she wasn't in a rush to leave. "You're not like most people here," she said quietly. I tilted my head. "Is that good or bad?" She smiled faintly. "It's rare." I could have said something clever. I could have asked her name right then. But instead, I said, "You seem like someone who reads when they can't sleep." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Almost every night." A pause. "Me too," I said. That night, I stayed long after we closed. Just me and the hum of the overhead lights. I sat in the same chair she always took and tried to imagine how she saw the world through those eyes of hers, calm, unreadable, like someone always halfway between here and somewhere else. On Monday, she came back, and this time, she brought 2 coffees. She handed one to me over the counter without a word. No explanation, no preamble, just that same quiet look that said, "This is something now." I didn't say thank you. I just took it gently and nodded. The cup was warm in my hand, and so was the silence between us. It was the first real thing we'd shared, and it wouldn't be the last. Her name was Clara. I didn't ask. She told me. It was a Tuesday. She was returning a book, The Hours, and as she placed it on the desk, she looked at me like she'd made a decision. "I'm Clara," she said. Just that. No last name. No over-explaining. I smiled. "Eli." She nodded. "I know." Of course she did. My name tag had been sitting there for weeks. Still, the way she said it, softly, like it mattered, made it feel new again. From then on, we stopped pretending. Not completely, but enough. She still came every afternoon, always around 3. Still sat in the same chair. Still read slowly, with her fingers trailing the lines like they held something important. But now, sometimes, she'd stop by the desk and talk. At first, it was books. Then it was music. Then it was memories, small, passing things. A concert in Prague. A bakery in Lisbon. A man she once loved who taught her how to taste wine like it meant something. She never gave the whole story. Just slivers. And I never pushed. I listened. Some people open all at once, spilling out like water. Clara was like fog. Slow to settle. Easy to get lost in. One Wednesday, the heater broke. The library was freezing. Most people left. Clara didn't. She wore a dark wool coat and sat with her legs curled up in the armchair, a knit scarf looped twice around her neck. I brought her tea, chamomile, from the little break room kettle. She accepted it with a grateful smile and a soft, "You're spoiling me." I laughed. "Not yet." She sipped. Her hands were pale against the white cup. "I used to work in a place like this," she said, without prompting. "Years ago, back before life turned serious." "What made it serious?" I asked. She looked down at the tea, then out the window. Marriage, divorce, illness, grief, all the usual grown-up tragedies. She said it with a kind of practiced ease, but I felt it, the weight under the words. I didn't speak. I just sat on the edge of the desk, watching her eyes follow the snow falling slow and heavy outside. After a moment, she said, "Sometimes I come here just to remember what it felt like to want something. Not need, not survive, just want." She glanced at me then. Not long, but long enough. A rush of something electric moved through me. That night, I dreamed of her hands, the way they moved when she talked, the way her thumb traced the lip of a coffee cup when she was thinking. I woke up with the sound of her voice still in my ears. She haunted the quiet places in me, and I let her. It was a Sunday when she asked if I ever felt older than I was. We were in the back room, technically off limits to patrons, but Clara had followed me in while I was restocking the poetry shelves, and I hadn't stopped her. The library was nearly empty. Outside, the wind rattled the bare trees. Inside, it was all dust motes and soft echoes. I was kneeling, stacking books, when she said it. "Do you ever feel like your soul's older than your body?" I paused mid-reach, looked up. Sometimes, I said. Why? She sat down on the small bench by the supply cabinet. Her coat was unbuttoned, scarf loose, and I noticed for the first time a faint scar near her collarbone, just above where her sweater dipped. Because sometimes, she said, I look at people my age and I don't recognize myself in them. But with you. She trailed off. Didn't finish. I stood slowly, book still in hand. Our eyes met. With me? I asked. She didn't look away. With you, I feel younger. Not childish. Just lighter. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't seduction. It was confession. And it filled the room with something more fragile than desire, something with breath and bones and maybe even a soul. She stood, brushing her hands on her thighs. For a moment, we were close, not touching, but closer than we'd ever allowed ourselves to be. I could see the faint freckles on her cheekbones, the tiny line beside her left eye that deepened when she smiled. She didn't smile now. Instead, she reached out, slowly, and touched my forearm. It was the first time she'd initiated contact. Her fingers were cool, steady. Eli, she said quietly, this isn't nothing. I know, I whispered. She let her hand linger, just for a second longer. Then she pulled away, stepped back. I should go, she said. But she didn't move toward the door. We just stood there, both of us unsure what to do with the space we'd crossed. Finally, I nodded. Tomorrow. She nodded once, the faintest curve of a smile touching her lips. Outside, the wind picked up. Inside, everything had changed. She stopped coming for 3 days. No warning. No text. Nothing. By the second day, I found myself checking the time every 10 minutes after 2:45 p.m. By the third, I was jittery, distracted. I shelved books out of order, forgot my lunch in the break room, spilled coffee on a return slip. I told myself not to overthink it. People get busy. Lives pull them elsewhere. But that wasn't it. I could feel it in my bones, the way absence sometimes feels louder than presence. On the fourth day, she walked in. It was already dark outside. I was about to close up early. A rare snowstorm had chased most of the city indoors when the door opened, slow and deliberate. She stood in the entrance, snow in her hair, coat undone, eyes red-rimmed. She looked straight at me. Hi, she said. That was all. I moved toward her before I could think. Not fast, not dramatic, just toward her. She didn't smile, just watched me, eyes tired. I'm sorry, she said. I thought I could step away and make it stop. Make what stop? This, she whispered. She stepped out of her boots and walked past the front desk like she always did. I followed her down the aisle, into the far corner of the library where the old history books gathered dust and the overhead lights flickered weakly. She turned, leaned against the shelves, arms crossed. I've tried so hard not to let this become something, she said. Because it shouldn't be. You're young. You have everything ahead of you. And you don't. I asked. Her lips parted slightly, caught off guard. I didn't mean it like. You said it like someone who's already written her last chapter, I said gently. But Clara, you're still here. She looked down, swallowed hard. Her hands were trembling. I'm afraid, she admitted. Of what? Of wanting you. Of what that would mean. We were standing inches apart now. The air between us hummed with the weight of all we hadn't said. You think I haven't been terrified this whole time? I said quietly. Of what this is. Of what it might break. She looked at me then. Really looked. You're not just someone passing through, Eli. I don't want to be something you remember as a mistake in 5 years. You won't be, I said. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, she reached up and touched my face. It was the barest graze of her fingertips. But I leaned into it, gently, reverently, like that single touch was a promise I'd been waiting for all winter. I shouldn't feel this, she whispered. But you do, I said. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. That night, I lay in bed with her name on my lips, her touch still lingering on my cheek like a ghost that didn't want to leave. And I knew, no matter how this ended, I was already changed. March came quiet and gray. The snow had melted, but the trees were still bare. The world felt paused, like it was holding its breath. So were we. Clara kept coming to the library, but not every day. Sometimes 3 times a week, sometimes only once. When she did, she sat with me behind the desk during the slow hours. We didn't pretend anymore, but we didn't name anything either. We existed in a space just shy of real. One Thursday afternoon, she brought a small paper bag with 2 sandwiches, pesto, and goat cheese on rye, and we sat out back near the staff entrance on a bench that faced the empty parking lot. She asked about my mother. I told her she was kind, but tired, always tired. I asked her if she believed in second chances. She said, "Only the ones we give ourselves." The wind was sharp. I watched it tug strands of hair loose from her bonnet. She turned to me. "I've been thinking," she said, "about disappearing." I blinked. "Clara." "Not literally," she said quickly. "Just slipping back into my life. The safe one, where no one questions what I'm doing, where nothing feels dangerous." I didn't respond, because I knew what she meant. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I said, "You could do that, and maybe it would be easier. Maybe it would even feel right for a while." She nodded. But I'd still be here, waiting, even if I wasn't." She looked at me like she didn't want to believe how much that hurt to hear. "I don't want to hurt you, Eli. You already have," I said, not unkindly. She swallowed. "Look down. And you've healed something in me I didn't even know was broken," I added. That night, I found a book at the front desk with a note tucked inside. It was The Unbearable Lightness of Being, the same one she ruined on her first visit. A new copy, pristine. The note was handwritten, folded neatly. "Eli, you reminded me what it feels like to be seen, really seen, and not looked through. I can't give you a version of me that's whole yet, but maybe one day I will. Thank you for being patient with a woman who's only just learning how to want again." Clara. I didn't see her for 2 weeks after that. Not until a soft April morning, when the world had finally turned green again. I was shelving books in the back, not expecting anything, not hoping. And then I heard her voice behind me. "Is that coffee still terrible?" I turned. She was standing there, hair loose, smile quiet. My throat tightened. "You came back." She nodded. I thought about not, but I missed the books. And the quiet. "And you?" I didn't move toward her. Didn't reach out. I just smiled. "The coffee's just as bad." "I'll take it," she said. We sat at the front desk, 2 steaming mugs between us. Nothing decided. Nothing defined. But everything felt possible. And in that still, fragile moment, with her beside me and the scent of spring on the air, I knew. Some stories don't need to be loud to change you. Some love lives in the pauses, in the restraint, in the quiet ache of wanting someone you were never supposed to. And in the end, the ache is its own kind of beauty.